Hello guys and welcome back for another Heartrune video. I hope that you're ready for a surprise, as today we will take a good and in-depth look of a build which is not so common at all. It contains two of the well-known weapons in the game, but the combination is quite unique and kind of unexpected between them. Our build for today will be a bleed build with two swords, and in other words, we will use the sword and shield combination paired up with the rapier. Before the start of the video, I want to quickly remind you that supporting the channel is free and it will not cost you anything more but a simple click. Another thing which you can benefit from is becoming part of our Discord community, as there you will get access to valuable information about the game, as well as different updates and builds and all kinds of other things. For those of you who are already part of that lovely community, I just want to say big thank you. Now let's get back on today's topic, which was the Bleed Rapier build in combination with sword and shield. By now you know that I'm trying to summarize all my builds in the form of necessary equipment such as armor pieces, jewelries, Heartrunes, weapons, as well as attributes and skill trees. Today, however, we will extend the list a little bit, as I want to give you some tips and tricks on how to perform your combos depending on your opponents. And also, I will share with you what are your worst nightmares when it comes to this build and the counters for it. So without wasting any more time, let's start as usual with the armor pieces and the artifact of choice. For this setup, I like to go with Lich Gloves, as I believe that this is the best artifact for the job, and for last perk I use Conditioning. You can pick Slash, Thrust, Flame or Abyssal Conditioning, as all four will eventually be useful, but you have to have in your mind the overall balance of resistance. My choice in this case is Thrust Conditioning, but the others, as I said, are also quite good. As we will be running in light equip load and also carrying a shield, this doesn't give us any other option but to slot only light gear pieces on all the armor slots. For that reason, going with the light chest piece from the worm called Silken Cocoon is probably your best bet. Having shirking energy and keen on it makes it really nice for offensive builds, and for third perk I used to go with Enchanted Ward. Because our build is focused on bleed one-shots and not so much on sustained fights and prolonged combat, we will need only one perk, and that would be the Omnidirectional Evade. This leaves us with the option to go for completely defensive perks for the remaining 3 pieces of armor. In my opinion, going for Evade perk and Enchanted Ward, Physical Conditioning or Elemental Conditioning on the remaining hat, pants and boots is probably the best that you can do. Again, for the Physical Conditioning you can always choose between Slash and Thrust, while for the Elemental one you can choose between Fire and Void. You might be thinking about shirking heals as well, but I would not really recommend you going for it, since you don't want to stay for too long in the fights. Your aim should be a quick combo into a potential kill and then of course getting out of that place. Another important note while we are still discussing the armor pieces is that you would need at least 4 items with intelligence in order to match the split of attributes. Having too much magnify or only dexterity pieces will make the split impossible, and this will basically result in damage loss. On all pieces you ideally want to have clean gems without any rune glass effects. The reason for that is again the bleed, as it will not be affected by any rune glass type. This way you will also get 2.5% more elemental protection, as my suggestion for you will be to run with 5 opals. Now that we know all about the armor pieces, let's take a quick look on the jewelries. The artifact which we will use here is the Endless Thirst, as the other artifacts would not have a significant impact on the build. With the provided empowering and fortifying toasts, in addition to the increased healing effects of all potions, the Endless Thirst is basically the best fit for the build. For last perk I prefer to use Nimble for that small but extra helpful recovery of your stamina. If you however feel the need of another perk, feel free to go for it. For the amulet, I believe that 2 perks are quite mandatory for your setup. The one, of course, is the type of protection, which in this case would be Trust instead of Slash, and the second mandatory perk will be Empowered, so we can guarantee some extra seconds in which we can deliver our maximum potential damage with the bleeds. For the last perk on your amulet, you can choose between many different options such as Shirking Empower, Health, Refreshing Recovery, or even Alchemist Reprieve. The last piece of the jewelry set is the one for the ring, and probably this is the most important of them all since you need exactly 3 specific perks. Those are Hearty for the extra stamina, Trust Damage for the extra Empower, and of course Bloodletting for the increased bleed duration. You cannot really replace any of the 3 perks simply because the effective damage and viability of the build will suffer, but the good part about it is that you can get such ring extremely cheap in the face of the Hoplite ring from the Gorgon's raid. Alright, so armor and jewelry pieces are now done. What is left from our equipment is the weapons, and in this specific case the shield, to complete our loadout. Starting with the rapier as your most important weapon, we must go for the artifact finisher. I've tried a couple of different options with and without the artifact, but in the end the results are always going in favor of the finisher. For last perk on it, I believe that Disdained Infliction would be your best pick simply because it will affect the power of your bleeds by 15%. And since the build is quite literally a bleed build, it is a no-brainer that this would be your best perk. For the gem on the finisher, my choice is Clean Onyx, so you can benefit from that huge 20% extra damage on high HP targets. Going for a rune glass is not really worth it on this weapon, as you will lose 5% from the effect of the Onyx, which is quite a lot when it comes to the overall bleeds. For the sword, I have really good news for you, as this is probably the most relaxed and cheap version of item in the whole build. Since you don't need any damage from it, the only thing that you care about is Sundering Stacks perk, which will assist you with some rend stacks before it's time to apply your bleeds. This, as you can imagine, will boost your damage and will be quite helpful to all the combo setups. If you still want to go for a perfect sword, however, I would probably go for Sundering Stacks, Play Crits and Leaping Strike. The reason is the additional damage after the leaping to my other 2 abilities, and of course the Play Crits for the extra anti-heal effect whenever I critically hit someone. And of course our third weapon in the build, the Mighty Shield necessary to set up our Q potential, which is quite specific one and unique in this case. I'm saying this because we need exactly 1 round shield, and the name for it is Temperate Disruption. Not only that this is a glass skin of the round shields in the game, but this small protector is providing you with illegal combination of 2 shield wards for slash and arcane damage. This is also the reason why I prefer to run Trust Protection on my amulet, as here I will get the value of 15% slash protection for free. This shield can be dropped by Overseer Levy in Shattered Mountain, so I would suggest you to make a camp nearby and start your farming session if you already don't have it. Alright, sounds good. We have all the details for the equipment. Now let's see the skill trees and the attribute splits. For the sword and shield skills, I prefer to invest heavily on the right side for the defensive bonuses. The main reason for that is the fact that I will use the combination of skills just to set up my combos. The damage of the sword is not necessary apart from the 3 abilities, and also being in light gear will make you extremely easy target if people focus you. When it comes to the rapier, I go with the points invested on the left side for Flourish and Finish and of course Tondo, as well as couple of other passives and bonuses which will give me enough points to unlock the ultimate upgrade for the Flourish and Finish. On the right side, important ability is your Evade, which is used for Empower and also for Animation Cancel, for which we will talk about in a second when we move to the different combos. Again, there are a couple of passives to provide you with extra damage, movement speed and other bonuses, which I highly recommend you to take. The attribute split was quite a test before I got it to perfect distribution. Going with higher dexterity and lower intelligence would benefit a bit more the sword because of the double scaling, but as we know by now, the sword damage is not important. Choosing the opposite and going for higher intelligence but lower dexterity, so you can guarantee the duration of your bleeds to be even higher with the 250 intelligence bonus, was also not a good option, as the base damage of both of your weapons would not be good. At the end, I came to the decision of breaking even in dexterity and intelligence at 250 points each. This way, not only your bleeds will double dip into the extended duration because of the bonuses, but also the base damage of your rapier will remain quite high at above 1600. You also don't want to surpass the 150 constitution, as otherwise you would not have enough points for your damage scaling. There is only one thing that we need to mention before going to the different combos and the counters to the build, and this will be the Heartrune. In my opinion, going for Dark Ascent is really nice choice, as you can extend your damage potential with quite a lot, as well as getting the extra heal when pressured by your enemies. In certain cases, however, you might feel the need of Stoneform, just so you can ignore all the crowd controls around you and you can execute and finish your targets. For that specific reason, I leave the choice to you, so have those things in mind. Alright, we have now all of the different equipment, we have the different skill trees, we know everything that we have to equip in order to make the build work. But one thing that we don't know yet is how to make the different combos against different players in light, medium or heavy gear, and how does the bleed work, because I'm pretty sure that many of you guys don't really know and don't really understand what is the core thing about the bleed. So that's why I'm going a little bit off of the usual builds, and I will try to explain it, of course, as clean as possible, as quick as possible, so you can understand and see what is the potential. So the first thing that we have to mention here is that I don't have the perfect equipment, but I at least have the proper setup when it comes to attributes. Of course, if you have the 725, ideally you would have 255, and now I have 251. But the most important thing in this screen currently is the weapon damage of your rapier. As you can see, I have 1604 base damage of my rapier, and this damage will be the one that all of my abilities will scale from, which means that if I look into my Tondo, which is my bleed application, I will do 10% from those 1600, meaning that without any empowers or any buffs or any rends on the enemy, I would apply 160 damage dot for each second for 10 seconds. Again, this is without any bonuses. So how does the bleed work? We want to apply a bleed to a target that can stack up to 3 times, meaning that if I apply 3 tondos in a spawn of different timings, I will basically apply 3 dots, and then I want to consume all of the bleeds with my Flourish and Finish. As you can see, on the bottom line of the Flourish and Finish description, we have the saying, finish lunges forward, dealing 120% direct weapon damage, and consumes all the rapier bleeds on any target, dealing 110% of their damage immediately. Now, of course, if you go further down with all of the dots and you get to the ultimate, you will see that now this 110% is increased to 150%. And this is basically where it all comes down to. Now, if I can give you a really quick example, if we assume that my Tondo does 100 damage for 10 seconds, this would be 1000 damage at the end. If I do a Flourish and Finish, I don't need to wait for the 10 seconds, but instead I will consume this 1000 damage right now. And on top of this 1000 damage is now 1500 simply because of the 150% increase. So as you can imagine, we want to apply bleeds, and in order to make the one shot, we want to consume them, so we can see this big number here that pops out. Now, when it comes to applying bleeds, there is one other thing that is extremely important for the build, and you would understand it later on also with the combos. When you approach your target and you want to hit your bleed stacks, you always want to have the maximum empower possible. The reason for that is because when you have empower active, like this one for example from my honing stone, or this one from my ring, basically my bleed damage will be 10% of the weapon damage plus the initial empower. The maximum empower, as we know, is 50%, so the more empower I can secure, and of course if I hit the maximum would be the best, it would basically mean more bleed damage over time. I can give you an extremely easy example. If we look at my first Tondo on this dummy, we will see that I'm doing 345 damage per bleed stack, right? Like this is 1 dot of a bleed. But now if I use 2 abilities, so I can get all those 3 stacks from my gloves, and now I do a bleed stack, you would see that the bleed is now inflicting 442 damage. This is mainly the reason because you want to get all the empower possible before applying your bleed, as if you get the empower after applying your bleed, the effect will not be there. So for example, if I again apply bleed here, 345, if now I get all the empower in the world, as you can see this bleed is not changing. So now it's too late to make it better. So that's why always make sure to apply your bleeds. Now let's go and check the different combos. Okay guys, so what are the 2 combos that I'm talking about and why they are so important? If we speak about the first combo that I will show you, which technically starts with the sword and shield and then follows up with the rapier, this is mostly commonly used against light players or medium players that already have half of their HP gone. The combo is technically jump into shield rush into shield bash, while changing to rapier to making the finish with the flourish and finish. Now, why this combo is against light players or used as a finisher of everything? It's simply because when you use your lich gloves, which will give you 10% empower after casting an ability, you would be able to guarantee the maximum potential of bleed damage when you use a jump, shield rush and then shield bash. As you can see, you have 30% empower, and with the additional that you have on yourself, you would secure the maximum bleed damage. Now the other combo is mostly used against mediums and heavies, like I said, because you just want to guarantee the application of bleed. What I mean by this is that sometimes if you try to use a Tondo on someone like this, he can just see it or predict it and basically he can dodge. Another really cool thing that Zed showed me, and shout out to Zed for this one, is if you put someone into crowd control with the flourish and finish pushback, you can then instantly evade forward so you can get the distance and apply the Tondo. So for example, it would look like this, and then he would not be able to dodge into this animation. Now of course, as you can imagine, using again one ability for the flourish and then using another ability of evade would mean 20% empower, additionally to the empower that you're gonna get from your omnidirectional evade perk. So as you can see, if he tries to dodge, I will ask him to dodge, of course. If I can click it just a second, try to dodge after the pushback. So let's see when he says okay, he will try to dodge and let's see if he can potentially get away from it. But if I basically do this, he cannot dodge, and as you can see, he has the bleed stack applied. So this is what it means to secure a bleed stack on someone. Now, if this guy is a medium, I would try to do this combo at first. Maybe if I really want to be sure about it, I will do it even 2 times, because as you can see, the cooldown of your flourish and finish is coming back really quickly. And when I secure 1 or 2 stacks, then I will change again into the sword and shield. Then I would have the pressure with the jump, shield rush, and then eventually the bash. I will change and I will finish the target. One really crucial and important thing to remember is when you use your sword and shield and when you use the abilities, you don't want to light or heavy attack your targets. This is because if you do this, your empower will instantly disappear. As you can see, I have this 1 stack of empower, but if I hit, my empower is instantly gone. So therefore, not using any light or heavy attacks on the sword is mandatory, and that's why I also said that the sword in this case doesn't matter at all. As long as you have Sundering stacks on it, you will be able to apply the rents, and that's basically it. The build is really strong in all kinds of situations when it comes down to small skirmishes. You can one-shot light, medium or even heavy players, with the only difference that for some you would need a bit more bleed stacks. On top of that, you would have quite a lot of mobility and speed, so avoiding your enemies and blocking ranged attacks would be quite easy and simple. However, I've mentioned that there are a couple of things which are completely stopping you from doing anything, and in most cases you will experience this versus good players which are aware of the bleed potential. The first and strongest counter are the cleansing potions in OPRs and wars. Those potions can remove all the different debuffs and dots, and as you can imagine, your bleeds will be gone in a second. Another ability that can do that is the Ice Tomb from the Ice Gauntlet, so every IG player out there is technically a counter of some sort. Of course, if you time your attacks properly, you can overcome this, but it's just a bit harder. Another extremely powerful counter to the bleed one-shot is the blocking. If a person is aware of your build and he blocks your flourish and finish, your bleed consumption will fail and therefore your one-shot potential is gone. The way to go around this is to charge a heavy attack with your rapier in order to make the person drop his block, but as you can imagine, it can be really tricky as the stamina damage from the rapier is not so powerful, and most likely, if he's an experienced player, he would not drop his block. Last but definitely not least, all kinds of crowd control and especially slows and roots can affect you really bad, as you will lose your mobility as well as the potential to follow up on someone. Be aware of abilities like Ice Shower, Ice Storm, Void Gauntlet Screaming, and any other that can technically root you in place. And with that guys, I think I've covered everything related to the new version of yet another samurai build. I think that the build is extremely fun and also the rewarding feeling of one-shotting someone is not comparable to anything else in the game. If you want to see more builds and guides related to the game, you should definitely join our Discord community server, and if you don't want to miss the next video here in YouTube, consider subscribing to the channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. You cannot hit me from there, bro. No. Please, baby. Yeah, bro. He's drinking a fucking potion, bro. Sit your fucking ass down, boy.